I want to share kind of the golden rule of authorship. Now, I've now worked with probably close to 500 authors at this point. I've worked with a lot of people. And people oftentimes will say, like, have I learned anything important about it? Now, I'll tell you one of the single most important things I've learned. And that is, every one of you is going to need to get over your fear that your stories are not ready. Every one of you. Now, in 2 weeks, all of you are going to meet your editor, right? You're going to be introduced to them. Now, there's an important thing to understand, is in all the authors, I've looked at them, we have this sort of target where I say, within your first 2 weeks, you should wind up giving some stories to your editor, at least one story, right? So a year ago from now, I basically took a group of about 35 students through the same process. And I looked at them to sort of see, like, all right, how many of them sort of had a manuscript that was approved, sort of early enough? How many did they get there? How many got there? Well, I looked to see there was about 2/3 of them that kind of had a manuscript that was approved to be published, and the other third of them needed more time. So I looked at what was the difference between the 2/3 and the 1/3. It was one thing. Everyone who was in the sort of approved group of authors had submitted at least one story to their editor within the first 2 weeks of writing. That's it. So what I want to tell you is that, like, this can start to build up. Right? It can start to be one of those things like, oh, I'll write another story next week or whatever it is next week. I want you to realize that you need to get feedback on your stuff, so write something and get it out. That's the core thing. The editors are there for you for this very reason. You're going to meet them in 2 weeks. I want to make sure when you meet them that you have something for them to read and get some feedback on your stuff. So this week and next week, I want you to write. I want you to make sure you write something, even if you're going to be mostly an episodic writer or mostly a save it to the end, but just write, because that's the key thing. Again, when people write and get feedback on it earlier, they just get it out of their way. They wind up succeeding in that way. So the worst thing you can do is not write anything in the next 2 weeks. That's the absolute worst thing. So just write something, get to your editor, and you'll succeed in that one. All right? Because here's what's going to happen to them. Once you get a story out there, you're going to realize that, like, it's better than you thought it was, right? It's not as crappy in your head as you thought, like, this is terrible, I can't write, I'm an awful person, I'm going to suck at this whole thing. You're going to get a lot of feedback. Your editor's going to be there, I'm going to be there. You're eventually going to have advanced readers, lots of copy editors. Eventually this will get great, but you're not writing a book today. You're writing first draft stories that we're going to use. And the important thing to understand is just focus on creating the content, because I will help you make sure it's publishable. I will not let any of you publish something that would embarrass you, I promise you. But I can't help you get there unless you get there, right? Unless you get something out there to get better. That's the cool thing. So I know that it seems crazy to think about 20,000 words in the next 10 weeks, but you will do it. And you'll do it because of the fact that, again, I'm going to push each and every one of you, and I promise I will show up in your apartment and basically knock on the door if I don't have a story that you give to your editor. Because it's just that important to get something out. It's not about how good it is or how bad it is. It's just about the fact that you kind of illustrate to other people you're open to feedback. And that's the reason for it, is like if you're saving it all to the end, you're too much thinking about this like the term paper world. I don't want you to think about that way. I want you to think of this as the iterative learning world, where when you submit a paper and you get it back, and that's the only thing that happened to it. That's not what this is. You're going to submit it, you're going to get feedback on it, and then suddenly your next story is going to be better and better and better. This is how we learn, by iteration, not by sort of submitting it and hoping we get approval on it. Does that make sense? Questions on this at all? Right, so remember, a lot of paths to get there, but the key thing is write something, get feedback on it, and get it out of your hair in that way.